The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of CNS Channel 6.
Hello again, Guyana, and welcome to another edition of Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey. Thank you so very much for joining us for what promises to be another informative edition. First of all, even though I told you the week before last Friday that I would not have been here last week Friday, I'd like to take this opportunity to apologize for not being here last Friday. But I know you were well informed and in a sense, entertained last week. As you know, last week the People's National Congress Reform held its 20th Biennial Congress. So we were very busy preparing for everything on Friday for that entire weekend, and I must say it was a success. However, we're going to be talking a little more about the Congress on the second half of today's program, as I am expecting the minister within the Ministry of Public Infrastructure and the newly elected first vice chairperson of the People's National Congress Reform. She'll be here and we'll be talking about her win, not only her win, but it's basically a win for the party and some other things, Congress. But on our first half of today's program, we're talking about something that we haven't spoken about in a while, especially from the Ministry of Communities. And it is my pleasure to welcome back after a very long time. He earlier reminded me that it has been about 18 months or so since he was on our program, the Minister of Communities, the Honorable Ronald Bulkan. Welcome back to our program, sir, and it's certainly a pleasure to have you back.
Thank you, Malika, and it's my pleasure to be here with you today, and pleasant good day to all of your viewers.
All right, great. Viewers, as you know, he's the man of the moment because the next big elections we're preparing for in Guyana is local government elections, which will be held in November. So today we thought it fit just to, on this program, I know the conversation around the country would have started, and you know, some groups and so on would have already jumped into the race, for want of a better term. But we thought it fit to begin our conversation right here, and what better to do that with the minister himself. First of all, Minister, I know there are a list of things that you want to get to today that the public should be aware of. The last time we had local government elections, and I must remind you viewers, it would have been the first time in a very long time. The last time we had those elections would have been in 2016. And I noticed one of the things we're going to talk about here is broadening the system of local government. When we say broadening the system, obviously because you feel that there is a need to broaden the system, let's talk about why, the whole aspect and so on of broadening the local government system.
That is correct, Malika. In fact, Article 12 of the Constitution says that local government by freely elected representatives of the people is an integral part of the democratic organization of the state. What that informs us is that the responsibility for delivering governmental services is not that of the central government alone. Our Constitution locates unambiguously the role of local government, and by extension, local government organs, which are referred to as local democratic organs in our Constitution. It means by definition that if a person resides in an area which does not have such an organ, it means that they're deprived of that constitutional provision to have a local representative to address local issues and problems. And in answer to your question about broadening of the system, there were a number of such areas that were not part of the local government system. So consistent with the strategic agenda of this administration to both resuscitate rehabilitate the system of local government, it meant that in addition to restoring capacity within those areas that were already served by councils, that we also needed to address and include residents living in areas that were outside of the system. And what it has resulted in, it has resulted in the inclusion or addition of 9 new local government areas that will be participating in the system of local government, and in particular, the local government elections that will be held in November of this year.
Minister, even before you continue, sorry, but in the 9 new areas, are the tongues included in the 9 new areas? Because I know from 2016 to now, I'm not certain about the number, but we have some additional tongues. Are they included there?
Yes, 9 towns participated in the 2016 elections.
Yes.
3 of them being new towns declared or brought into being by this administration. These being Mabaruma in the Burimo-Waini region, Bartica in the Kuyuni-Mazaruni region, and Letem in the Upper Takatu, Upper Essequibo region. These being the administrative centers of those 3 regions. And again, consistent with pledges made by the administration, and in fact, by His Excellency in his address at the opening of the 11th Parliament in June of 2015, where he declared that the administration will upgrade the status of these 4 areas, those 3 that I've named, as well as Madhya, to township status. 3 of those areas became townships in time for the 2016 elections. We were unable to achieve the same at Madhya. So Madhya was recently, our visitors, our viewers may have heard, was recently declared to be Guyana's newest or 10th township. So for the 9 new local government areas that have been recently created and that will participate for the first time in local government elections, the township of Madhya is one, as well as 8 new neighborhoods which will elect their own councils or neighborhood democratic councils.
So I want to jump in here again, and again, this is a document coming from your ministry, and I know it's very accurate. And viewers, just to remind you, as the Ministry of Communities try to improve the local government system, remember it is also a mandate that was given by His Excellency, the President of our country, Brigadier David Granger. And one of the things you noted here that the President posted is that, to quote, the new model will eradicate the colonial compound mentality. Have we been able to, because again, I know this is, and we're already calling it historic, which is the second local government elections since the APNU AFC took office. But thus far, can you say that we have to some extent been able to achieve this in terms of the fact that the new model is expected to eradicate the quote-unquote colonial compound mentality? Have we been able to achieve some of that thus far?
Yeah, I would stress on the sum, Malika. The restoration of capacity and the rehabilitation of this system has proven to be not an easy undertaking. In fact, it would not be unfair of me to say that we have literally had to remove this system from a grave in which it has been placed. So we have had to exhume this system, and we have been engaged in injecting life into the system, and in particular into the capacity of individual councils. So yes, some progress has been made. Many initiatives and activities have been conducted by the ministry with individual councils, both via our regional democratic councils, as well as directly with NDCs and municipalities. But following on a very important conference that was held approximately 1 month ago, which again was another historic activity, or the inaugural National Conference of Local Democratic Organs, NCLDO, which brought together representatives from each of the 81 local government organs, these being our 10 RDCs, or Regional Democratic Councils, our 9 municipalities or towns, as well as the 62 NDCs, or Neighborhood Democratic Councils. That conference brought together represent the leaders, or the head as well as deputies. These would be the regional chairperson and the deputy regional chairperson in the case of RDCs. The same for NDCs, chairman and vice chairman. For municipalities, the mayor and deputy mayor. That is from the elected or political element of the council. The head of the administration, which would be either the regional executive officer or the town clerk in the case of the municipalities, and the overseers in the case of our NDCs. Representation, there was also representation from the minority element of councils, because each council has majority representation as well as minority representation.
Yeah.
So we wanted both sides of the council to be heard. And I'm pleased to say that there was approximately 80% of the total number of delegates that were expected to participate at that conference that came together to, if you will, speak about the issues, the challenges, and their constraints. And what we have found, in answer to your question, is that indeed it is taking time for this new system to develop the level of efficiency and effectiveness that we are engaged in trying to restore. But yes, progress has been made.
Has been made thus far. All right. Viewers, if you're now tuning in, of course, today my conversation is with the Minister of Communities, the Honorable Ronald Bulkan. We're talking all things local government and elections and so on. Minister, I'd like you to take some time and talk about registration. Because the strangest thing is that we're going to be sitting here and elsewhere in other media houses and media entities, and we're going to be talking about upcoming local government elections for weeks and months on end. And then right before then, people realize that they're not in order and they can't really vote for their representatives of their communities and so on. I'd like you to take some time and talk about registration.
Malika, the principal responsibility for the conduct and management of these elections is that of GCOM. And I'm aware that GCOM, over the last 5 weeks, since the naming of the date for local government elections, which of course is November 12th, they have started a very aggressive public education or information campaign informing all potential candidates of what are the requirements. And the requirement for the submission of the lists of candidates would be the 21st of September. And that information has been placed in the public domain continuously by GCOM over the last 5 weeks, informing potential candidates of what are the specific requirements. However, that is preceded by another very important activity, which is the submission of symbols. And the deadline and the closing date for the submission of symbols is actually this weekend.
Yes.
So persons who would not have submitted by the end of this weekend the symbols would not be in a position to contest those elections.
Viewers, I trust that you're listening. Those of you who have ambitions regarding local government elections, well, they basically have hours left. I trust that you can all get it together in that short space of time, because you're getting a reminder today. I know the information would have been out there, but there are times when some of our viewers miss things. Minister, I also want you to move on to something else, and this is where the controversy comes in, because there's always criticisms coming from the opposition. And I know the opposition would have accused the current administration. when it comes to local government elections and pushing control. I know there's not much that you can say regarding GCOM because you're not internal in terms of GCOM, but what would you like to say regarding some of the accusations that the main opposition usually makes regarding the government's handling of local government elections?
The first thing I'd like to say, Malika, is that whatever publicity is associated with the subject of local government, and in this instance, the many criticisms that have been leveled by the political opposition in a very sustained manner over the past month or so, is welcome news to us. Because it is the case that prior to the entry of APNU in the previous parliament or in the 10th parliament, that no one spoke about local government. It was considered to be irrelevant in national administration. It was APNU that changed that status, that placed the issue of local government at the forefront of our parliamentary agenda in the previous parliament. And our advent into government following the 2015 elections saw a continuation of our efforts to restore the issue of local government where it belongs, as prescribed for under our Constitution. So, despite the criticisms that are being made now, I see it personally as something that is positive, because more and more persons are being made aware of the issue of local government, and I believe by extension to begin to develop a greater understanding and appreciation of what the system is, of what it is designed to achieve, and its role as part of national governance. Now, the criticisms, the recent criticisms of the political opposition has to do with an exercise that the ministry is engaged in, which essentially has to do with the rebalancing of the size of a number of our councils. And as part of this rehabilitation and restoration exercise to which I've spoken, among other things, we have recognized that there are many NDCs that are disproportionately large, and in fact that several of them are larger than even some of our municipalities. So take the case of Linden, for example, which has a 16-member council, that there were a number of NDCs that were larger in size, and therefore we needed to rationalize the responsibilities of these organs vis-a-vis their sizes. And what it has resulted in a marginal reduction in the size of a number of councils. This has been met with cries by the opposition leveled against the administration of being undemocratic, of gerrymandering, of trying to create an unfair advantage. But I believe today's media carries a response of the ministry where this issue has been placed into perspective and where the point has been made, what was the intent of the central government in relation to rationalizing the size of a number of councils, as I said, vis-a-vis their responsibilities. I've referred to the case of Linden, for example. The size of the Linden Council was actually reduced prior to the March 2016 local government elections. It used to be, the size was larger, and as part of that rationalization exercise, the size of that council was reduced in 2016. So this is a work in progress that has been undertaken by the ministry. We have started with a number of councils now, and it is not complete. But I am personally not unhappy when the opposition chooses to speak about the
Of
system of
local
local government, because this is a system that they saw no relevance for, and this is borne out by their actions during their 2+ decades when they were in government. In fact, our viewers may recall that when APNU, at the level of the leader of the opposition then, Brigadier David Granger, was out on the streets protesting weekly, calling on the Donald Ramatara administration to restore local government elections to Guyana, the then minister, Mr. Norman Whitaker, publicly declared that the people are not interested in local government, and that if local government elections were held, that less than 35% of the people would participate. Well, the previous administration refused to hold local government elections. It was left onto this administration to do that, and I am pleased to say that Mr. Whitaker was proven wrong. The level of participation in the 2016 elections was slightly in excess of 43%. It is our expectation that, based on the public awareness that the ministry has been engaged in over the past 3 years, the minimum target that we have set for participation in the 2018 local government elections is 50%.
And I'm really happy that you said that, because indeed you don't have 2 elections yet to compare the two, but you said that's the minimum target. Major campaigning may not have started yet, especially where the AP. I know there've been some amount of campaigning, but the major campaigning would not have begun as yet. But from what you're hearing on the ground, I mean, you're talking about a 50% target. Do you believe that people are now more interested and more involved enough for the number to be the percentage to be even higher than that?
Yeah. Malika, I need to qualify that figure.
Okay.
Because these elections are not singular. It is not a single election that is taking place. In fact, it is not even 80 elections that will be taking place, which would be for our 10 towns, and now what will be 70 NDCs. They are within the system, and within those 80 organs, there will be approximately 595 constituencies. So we will have closer to 670 elections that are taking place simultaneously on that day when these elections are held. So the level of participation has to be judged within each of those elections, whether it's for a constituency within a local government area or whether it's participation within the entire organ. Now, I'd like to give you an example to illustrate the importance of these many elections that I'm referring to. In the 2016 local government elections, there was a tie within one of the constituencies. I believe it was constituency 7 in the Rose Hall municipality. It reminds us how competitive, how intensely competitive these elections are at the level of the constituency, because the system allows for residents wherever they may live to elect one person, one candidate who will become the representative or the constituency councillor within that local government area to represent their interests. So the level of participation has to be judged within each of those constituencies and within each of those organs. So when we speak of one global figure, and that 50% figure that I gave you, it must be put in its proper context, that these elections are actually local. And whilst there may be some significance or relevance in giving the overall participation, it is more important to ascertain the level of interest within each of our communities, and that would be determined at the level of the constituency.
Minister, I know you're focusing on the positives and what the country and what our people can gain from local government elections and so on, but I can't possibly have you on this program without bringing up what has been somewhat of a controversial issue, and this is regarding the AFC's position and decision to go it alone in terms of local government election. And viewers, this is just to remind you, the government indeed and the president indeed would have spoken on the matter. But Minister, thus far from what you're seeing and from what you're hearing, can that in any way hurt us, and when I say us, I mean the APNU, hurt those elections for the APNU?
The answer to that is, Malika, is no. These elections, as we keep reminding the public, are local elections. These elections allow for persons to contest, whether as a political party, as a civic group, or the level of the constituency, even as an individual, meaning that you do not have to be allied either to a political party or to a civic group to contest at the level of the constituency. So there is no restriction to the number of political parties, nor civic groups, nor indeed individuals that can contest these elections when they are held. I would not want to see it as controversial, the fact that the APNU, that the AFC rather, have decided that it would be advantageous for them to test, as in their words, to test their electoral strength at these local government elections in 2018. I believe it will help to deepen the level of interest across the country. It will lead to a greater level of civic participation, which is, of course, part of the desire of the administration, because it will result in a greater level of people's empowerment, which lies at the core of the strategic agenda, which is to empower people within communities, wherever they reside, to enable them to accept responsibility for the management as well as the development of their respective communities. And of course, for that to happen, it requires individuals, groups, and contestant parties to begin to take ownership of their areas.
Okay, can it also be seen as a test of strength, to use your own words, as a test of strength for the APNU, especially with the fact that the local government elections are open? You did say that groups, single persons, anyone can, once you meet the criteria, obviously, anyone can be a part of local government elections. Can that also be seen as a test of the APNU's strength in itself?
I do not necessarily hold the view that the local government elections are a barometer necessarily of general and regional elections. Local government elections allow residents to be able to, the opportunity to elect an individual from within their own community, a person that they have confidence in, that who would work in a council that is situated within their area to address local or community issues, whether they're relating to the environmental management and sanitation, that is the collection and disposal of garbage, the conditions of the community, whether it's the parapets, the playgrounds, street lighting, to ensure that the roads are properly maintained, that the health center functions effectively, that public security is addressed, that there's adequate street lighting. Local government elections allows persons and citizens this opportunity to elect an individual that may not necessarily be aligned to a political party or a civic group. So I do not hold the view that it's a barometer of national support.
Great. Actually, you're the first person that said that, and I like the fact that you've said that, because it gives people a broader perspective, because you hear people running around and talking about, oh, this is a prediction. They're calling it a prediction. Minister, I know I have to wrap up with you very soon, but before I do that, I'd like to give you an opportunity to talk about anything that you feel that the public should know at this time, and anything that you would want to remind the public regarding local government elections. And I know you won't only be on this program, but other programs, other media entities and avenues.